of our time. Film has made it possible for us to see our century as no other has ever been seen. It's changed my view, at least, of how to look at history. Film goes straight to the brainstem, the coils of emotion in all of us. It's closer somehow to what we actually see and experience of the world. Chaotic, fast-moving, apprehended or sensed rather than analyzed. There are some things words alone cannot convey about the 20th century. The Great Depression, the frenzy of the 20s, or the slaughter of trench warfare. I've gained through film a stronger sense of connection than ever to those people whose faces I see or once only read about. Many of the pictures suggest how this century has dwarfed individuals. We move among monoliths of our own creation, skyscrapers and factories and superhighways, often in crowds. But individual faces keep leaping out of the blue. Our sins and achievements may be collective, but we experience them one by one. Each of us registers before the lens a singular, personal reaction to moments great and small. What amazing creatures we are, restless, ambitious, former amphibians, so eager to do and record our tricks before high heaven. You can run film backwards and forwards, cut, juxtapose, rearrange, freeze, scramble the reality and see a different story every time. But history is story within story within story. And now we have to ask, whose story? Victor or vanquished? Leader or follower? The strong or the weak? The sheer volume of images discourages the idea of telling a complete story. And of course, the camera cannot capture what it cannot see. So much of the century is out of sight. But think what it means that some things were not. Reinhold Niebuhr warned us in the 40s that the devil was back. But it was something else to see him in the sports palace and death camps and the rubble of cities. The devil and all his handiwork. As this century began, history was thought to be a current whose force you could measure and direction you could chart, and it was still taking us to glorious destinations, progress toward a higher civilization. How to make sense of history now, seeing this? Who could make sense of it? Maybe no one, but we could hope that film might make it impossible to forget. In remembrance, the wise man said, resides the secret of redemption. That's the reason for doing a series like this. One of the poets of our time has said that with its fantastic proliferation of mass media, our planet is witnessing a process that escapes definition, characterized by a refusal to remember. A refusal to remember. So that it often seems that what's happening today, this very minute, is our sole criterion for judgment, that all our yesterdays have little relevance. Well, that may increasingly be so, but I'm convinced that film can help us to discover the vivacity of the past. Now, it's not a replacement for the books, diaries, letters, and personal memories that are prime sources for reconstructing history. But even the tiny fragments that are preserved of film have, for me, a special magnetism and can help us discover those stories within stories. That's one way I'm able to make sense of this century as a journalist trying to find the roots of current events. History, says one of my colleagues in this search, doesn't speak in equations, only in parables we have to interpret. Well, there are parables in pictures too, and looking at them, I have to agree with Thomas Carlyle that the past is a world and not a void of gray haze. So let's look at that world and begin at the turn of the century. Film was as primitive as the century was young. Thomas Edison attempted to recreate some of the major news events of his day using miniature models and the battlefields of Orange, New Jersey. The Boer War, the eruption of Mount Pelee on Martinique, the Chinese Boxer Rebellion. This effort to recreate on film the martial temper of the times caught the spirit of the age. As the new century approached, Americans had an appetite for new markets and a yearning for adventure. Listen to this editorial from the Washington Post of the day. A new consciousness seems to have come upon us. The consciousness of strength, ambition, interest, land hunger, pride, the mere joy of fighting. we are face to face with a strange destiny. The taste of empire is in the mouth of the people, even as the taste of blood in the jungle. Pretty strong stuff. But it was the popular brew of the day and intoxicated millions with heady nationalism. None drank more lustily from the keg than this man, Theodore Roosevelt. He hugged the contradictions of America to his chest as if they were prize jewels. Warmonger, peacemaker, an Easterner educated at Harvard who went west to prove himself a cowboy, a compulsive activist, yet an intellectual who read history, wrote history, and made history. His mind brimmed with ideas, most of them as out of scale as those famous teeth. And he was against anything lazy. It took him but 5 years to rise from the police commissioner of New York to President of the United States. Just months before he came into office, the 20th century had officially come into being and would find in Theodore Roosevelt our robust American expression. They were made for each other, TR and his times. You can sum him up with a bit of cheerful thievery from physics. Energy equals TR squared. His was a body always in motion, equal parts of business and will, whirling around a nucleus of optimism.
When you realize what a pathetic little fellow he was as a child, asthmatic, frightened, timid, literally scared of his own shadow, the idea that he would become the emblem of American vigor, manhood, strength, and so forth is really an extraordinary metamorphosis. He felt, because his father had said so again and again, that life could be snuffed out very quickly at any time. So, get action, Theodore Sr. would preach. Seize the moment. Man was not meant to be an oyster. And he generated that theme in American life. Isn't it wonderful to be alive? Isn't it wonderful to be an American? Isn't it wonderful to have all this good work to do?
The podium from which TR conducted much of the hurly-burly of his adult life, he built here at Oyster Bay, New York, on Sagamore Hill, overlooking Long Island Sound. Historian David McCullough has written about some of TR's livelier times.
It was here that he was notified of his nomination for governor, as vice president, and for president. And he spoke to a crowd. Was he a good speaker?
He wasn't an eloquent speaker, and he didn't have a very good voice. He'd say, "I want you to hit the line hard." And he'd chop his hands like this, but he conveyed conviction. He conveyed passion and determination, and all of that was much more important than eloquence or the refined, beautiful sentence.
Roosevelt caught the public fancy in the 1890s as a young politician with a pugnacious view of America's destiny. The world's pace was quickening, and TR wanted to move his country and himself to the head of the parade.